JohnMBarry, The Great Influenza, the story of the deadliest pandemic in history. Embark on a chilling journey through the deadliest pandemic in history as JohnMBarry's The Great Influenza uncovers the harrowing details of the 1918 flu outbreak. This book explores the American medical landscape leading up to World War I, highlighting the important breakthroughs that took place in fields such as germ theory and the public health system. As the devastating strain of influenza arrives, readers bear witness to the far-reaching effects on society and the valiant efforts of the scientific community in their search for an answer. Within this summary, you'll discover the birth of modern medicine, the shocking consequences of military involvement in the pandemic, and the insidious nature of the virus itself.
Revolutionizing American Medicine. The book explores the evolution of American medicine from the outdated practices of bloodletting to becoming world-class medical science. The transformation started with Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, which recruited graduates from the finest German medical universities, instantly gaining credibility. The Hopkins and Rockefeller Institutes raised the bar for American medical schools, making American doctors as good as, if not better than, their European counterparts by the outbreak of World War I. In 1918, Hopkins inaugurated a school for public health aimed at preventing diseases. Welch presided over a close-knit group of brilliant, curious researchers who revolutionized the American medical field. The lurking danger of influenza. Influenza is a virus that is highly efficient in mutating and finding new hosts. Each molecule of the virus can multiply into thousands of new proteins, thus making it extremely contagious. Influenza encodes its genes in RNA, which doesn't have proofreading mechanisms, increasing the chances of mutations that can make the virus more dangerous. When a particular mutation is effective, the virus finds maximum host individuals to challenge the immune system. Influenza adapts to humans, causing pandemics as human immune systems haven't learned to respond to the new strains. Our immune system has dendritic white blood cells that teach other white blood cells which enemies to target. Knowing the lurking danger of influenza, we need to take care and practice preventive measures. The unseen enemy. In 1918, the world was ravaged by World War I. President Woodrow Wilson committed the U.S. to the war effort, and a draft was instated, leading millions of men to gather at military camps, each with slightly different disease immunity. The war also gave the medical research community an injection, leading to the first use of medicine as a weapon. However, the conditions created by the war effort were perfect for the spread of a virus. Non-combatants also joined the war effort by producing military material in factories, leading to inadequate housing and overcrowding. The Army's budget for medical research increased massively, and a serum was developed to alleviate pneumonia, but the Surgeon General failed to anticipate the potential for a pandemic as the influenza virus hit full force. Deadly waves. The winter of 1917 in Haskell County, Kansas, marked the origin of the influenza pandemic that became known as the Spanish flu in its first wave. The virus later mutated, leading to a second wave, which was deadlier and more gruesome. The virus caused victims' skin to turn blue then black, rendering its victims helpless. The U.S. Army continued troop movements, leading to the virus' rapid spread worldwide. Despite the scientific urge to find a solution, William Welch, the head of public health at Johns Hopkins, failed to help and later contracted the flu himself. The deadly 1918 influenza outbreak in Philadelphia. In 1918, a deadly flu virus hit Philadelphia, sickening 600 soldiers and threatening to engulf the overcrowded city. Despite warnings from doctors, Philadelphia's public health director, Wilmer Crusson, denied the threat and took no action. A massive city parade was held, attracting over 200,000 people, and within days, all the city's hospital beds were filled with dying patients. City officials and army commanders failed to respond effectively to the crisis. At Camp Grant in Illinois, the commanding officer refused to limit troop training exercises, resulting in over 1,800 troops reporting ill in a single day. The deadly outbreak was exacerbated by bungled responses from authorities. The deadly 1918 flu. The 1918 influenza was a lethal and gruesome strain that mostly impacted young and healthy individuals, causing vigorous immune system responses that filled lungs with fluid and dead cell debris. The victims were doubly dead in that they died young and in agonizing pain, with symptoms such as subcutaneous emphysema and delusions. The flu killed more U.S. military personnel than the entire Vietnam War, but Americans were less affected, with symptoms leading to pneumonia in only 10 to 20% of cases. In contrast, isolated areas such as jungle villages and Pacific Islands witnessed up to 22% of deaths due to the flu. Scientists race against time. As a pandemic spreads across the United States, the country's top scientists race to understand the virus and find a cure. Despite overwhelming evidence that the flu was spread by an airborne pathogen and through hand-to-face contact, no one listened to their warnings. However, scientists like Oswald Avery, William Park, Anna Williams, and Paul Lewis began developing a vaccine and testing what they thought was the pathogen responsible for the virus. While Park and Williams believed the pathogen to be Bacillus influenza, Avery had doubts. He continued studying patient samples, and his findings revealed that the cause of the disease wasn't what they thought. As scientists worked tirelessly to find a cure, bodies piled up on the streets outside their laboratories. Catastrophic loss, inaction of U.S. government during the 1918 influenza. The 1918 influenza outbreak was one of the most catastrophic pandemics of all time. If the U.S. government had taken action earlier, countless lives could have been saved. Army Surgeon General William Gorgas had warned Army generals about the spread of the disease, but his warnings were dismissed. Despite the rising number of casualties, President Wilson did nothing to slow down the spread of the disease. General Rupert Blue, Wilson's surgeon, even blocked research into a cure. The Army's monopoly on doctors and nurses meant that civilian hospitals were either closed or understaffed. Instead of alleviating the suffering of the affected individuals, the inaction of the U.S. government contributed to the catastrophic loss of life worldwide. The devastating consequences of the 1918 flu pandemic. The 1918 flu pandemic led to lasting mental instability in some individuals, including U.S. President Woodrow Wilson. The pandemic slowly abated, but it had an immense impact as it caused millions of deaths worldwide and left many children as orphans. Mutations in the virus led to fewer fatalities in cities struck later in the epidemic, but the true scope of its consequences is hard to fathom. The quest for the cause. The 1918 pandemic challenged the belief that science could solve anything. Although scientists were haunted by the horrors they saw during this time, they remained obsessed with finding a cure. Their greatest question was the cause of influenza. William Park and Anna Williams reversed their previous claim that B. influenza was the cause of the virus. Paul Lewis held firm to the idea, despite mounting evidence against it, and died in Brazil investigating a deadly outbreak of yellow fever. In his lab, 2 years later, the ultimate breakthrough for the discovery of the virus that caused influenza in humans was made. Oswald Avery made a new discovery, showing that DNA is the vehicle for the transfer of genetic information, providing the basis for molecular biology. The quest for the cause eventually ended, but not without tragedy and brilliance.
In The Great Influenza, JohnMBarry provides insight into the devastating pandemic of 1918 and the tumultuous state of the scientific landscape at the time. As the virus unleashed its apocalyptic wrath, claiming millions of lives globally, numerous scientists searched desperately for a cure. Despite their efforts, many failed to find a solution, leaving future generations to grapple with the aftermath of the deadly virus. The book highlights the desperate circumstances, relentless determination, and tragic sacrifices of those who fought tirelessly against the disease. Ultimately, the Great Influenza serves as a harrowing reminder that pandemics can have tragic and far-reaching consequences, necessitating resilience and unity in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges.